I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to introduce Tina, but I don't know Tina more than her really good introduction that everybody received as an invitation to come. I do know the way that I found out about her was reading her really great articles in the American Bee Journal and the Bee Culture. And that was how I contacted her the first time a couple years ago, I think it was. So I joined the Four Corners for a year and attended a couple of the meetings. She's a great leader in the meeting, so it was fun to feel like you get to know who she is a little bit by see how she operates. She's kind of one of those amazing ladies like we find in beekeeping. Um, One of the things that I thought was interesting is that she runs Langstroth, long Langstroth, as well as the regular tall ones, and she does top bar beekeeping, which I have never done, which I think it would be really fun to learn how to do that as we age and find it's hard to keep bees from the ground to 6 boxes high. She also does queens and nukes and honey, and she is impressively the founder of the Four Corners Beekeeping Association in Colorado, and she was the past vice president of the Colorado State Beekeepers Association, which I think is really high zoot. And she also, I mean, if there wasn't anything more that she could do, she's the architect and former director of the Colorado Master Beekeepers program. So, I mean, really, we're lucky to have her tonight. So,
Wow, that was really nice. Thank you.
well, thank you for accepting our invitation. Great.
Oh, my pleasure. You know, I love talking about bees. So this will be fun. Yeah, I didn't see the thing that said you started to record. So if you didn't, don't forget to push that button.
Yeah, we
Uh,
we we heard it. Just a voice comes on and says it's being recorded.
oh, okay. Maybe I was busy listening to something else. Anyway, we're going to talk about decoding clues from the hive, from the beehive tonight. What the heck are they doing? How often do we say that? What the heck are they doing? It's funny. Our bees don't read the book we read. And so sometimes we have to be a detective to try to figure out what are they doing. And one thing I've noticed I've been beekeeping for 19 years now and trying to help other people is that it's hard to teach people to be observant. And that's what this is really about, is to be observant. So if you get an idea of what you're looking for in the hive, that's going to really be helpful. Just remember, I need to be observant. So when we do a hive inspection, the first thing always to do is start at the entrance. Before you even crack the lid, look at the entrance of the hive and see what's going on. There's kind of a myth that says if there's pollen going in, that means your hive is fine. That isn't actually true, because if your hive has lost its queen and then lost its brood and now it's a laying worker, they're going to be bringing in tons of pollen to feed all that drone brood that they're making. So you really can't stop here. You have to keep going and really inspect your colony. There are quite a few things you can see at the entrance. Honestly, most of the time, and hopefully you're going to see nothing unusual at the entrance of the hive. But you might see a pile of dead bees out front. And that could be many things. It could be that your colony has a pretty bad disease and the bees are so overwhelmed that they're just dropping the bees out the front entrance and not really flying away with them.
Hi, do you see a re
Are you not seeing my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what that was anyway.
Somebody mentioned it is recording. The light is on. It's recording.
Okay. Okay. Something else you might see at the entrance of your hive. And I want to say one more thing about a pile of dead bees in front. That is typically pesticide kill. And I was in Israel last summer with a bunch of beekeepers, and there were 10 colonies in this yard, maybe more, I don't remember. And half of them were facing east and the other half were facing west. And only the half that were facing east had piles of dead bees out front. These were commercial beekeepers I was hanging out with. And they were like, well, it can't be pesticide because only half the colonies have piles of dead bees out front. And I said, yeah, but look, it's all the ones that are facing east. That's because they're facing in the direction that the pesticide is. And the other guys are going somewhere else to get their forage. And so just because all of your colonies don't have a pile of dead bees out front doesn't mean it isn't a pesticide kill. And another thing you might see out front, and this is a lot more common, is a skunk belly ditch. So when a skunk comes up to your hive, it scratches at the entrance and a bee comes out to see what it is and it eats the bee. And it can do that all night long. But the bees can attack the skunk by stinging its belly. And so before it gets started, the skunk will dig a little ditch to put its belly into, and so that the bees can't sting it. And sometimes then it will. So I've had a debate with someone. It looks like this little pile of barfed up bees next to the skunk belly ditch. If your hive is too high, they don't dig the little ditch for their belly. They just stand there and eat bees. And then I don't know if they barf up the bee carcasses after, or if it comes out the other end. But there's a thing that looks like cat poop made out of bees, which is a horrible thing to see. But if you see it, you know what it is. It's a skunk. And you can solve that, of course, with a not welcome mat, which is a piece of plywood with nails sticking up about every inch. The other thing you might see is mummies. And this is what chalk brood mummies look like. The white ones are just they're dead, of course, but it's a fungal disease, and the fungus is creating spores inside the body of the bee. And this is what they look like when they first start to be filled up with these spores. But as the spores reproduce, of course, the bee is dead already, but the spores are still reproducing in there, they turn black. And every one of these has millions of spores in it. So it's really important, if you see this, to get all the way down to the bottom board and clean off your bottom board and take your frames that have those and shake it out and, get rid of those. Don't leave them for your bees, because oddly, bees don't just carry dead things out and throw them out. What they do is they carry them all the way through the brood chamber several times sometimes before they take them out the door. And when they do that with chalk brood mummies, they're just spreading those spores everywhere. It's a terrible thing. You also might find cannibalized larvae, which means the larvae either had a disease or more likely it had varroa attached to it. And so the bees eat the head off of the larvae and then they haul the rest of the body out. So if you see a lot of white larvae outside that are headless, that's what that is. And then the second thing you want to look at is traffic. And partly you just want to know, do I need to change my entrance reducer, or kind of what's going on in the hive? Although I have to say, if you see a traffic issue, like there's almost no traffic, so you know that your population is really dropping, it's way too late to do something. So this is another reason you can't just stop at the door and say, oh, I have plenty of traffic, it's fine, because 2 brood cycles later, your traffic will be a lot less, and then it's way too late to solve it. So look at what's happening at the door and then pop the top and see what's really happening inside there. And when you do, look at the bees. Before you do anything else, you take that inner cover off and just stand there and look at the bees and listen to them and get an idea of what they sound like and what they look like, so that you know what normal is. And then the next time you get in there and they're queenless and they're running like crazy, or they are keening because their queen is gone, you know instantly that's not normal. I mean, they just look like they're moving different and they sound different. So now you know that you need to spend a little more time, really look around and find out, be observant, find out what's going on. So for a basic hive inspection, we're looking for mostly 4 things. Is the colony queen right? Is there enough space for her to lay eggs and for them to make food? Is there enough food in the colony? And is the brood healthy? So if you see a frame like this, you know your brood is healthy. That looks great. But there's no open larva, right? And there's a queen there, so you know that it's queen right. But you really can't stop right here because we haven't seen enough clues to know that that queen is still laying. So you want to keep going and make sure that you see eggs, even though you see the queen right there. And I love it when my queens have an abdomen that's a different color than the rest of the bees. It makes her a little easier to spot. But I mean, I like my tiger tails too. So your first question is not only is there a queen, but is there a laying queen? One of the clues we see in here is that this queen has a wonderful retinue. Like she is surrounded by bees. And that means that her pheromone is really strong and they're loving on her. And we see a larva here. So there's probably open larva all under here, but you want to make sure that there is. So it's not good enough to see the queen. You need to see that there's open larva and worker brood in there. But this is a wonderful thing that they're touching her and they're picking up that pheromone and spreading it around the hive. You don't need to see the queen actually, because what you need to see is the eggs to know that you have a queen that's laying well. But it is really nice to see the queen. So I'm going to give you some clues about how to find the queen. And that starts from when you take the inner cover off. Hopefully you haven't smoked your colony. If you do smoke them, the bees will start running and it kind of destroys this and the queen starts running too. But if you can get in your colony without smoking it, then when you take your inner cover off, just look at where the bees are. This isn't a very populous colony, which makes it really easy to see where the queen is. There's about a 5-inch circle of bees and she is under this circle of bees. And also the bees are giving us the look right here. They're coming up and looking at me, and right here, they're looking at me. You can see that over here, the bees are coming and going and doing their thing. And same thing here. They're not, a little bit, they're looking at us. So the queen is probably on this frame and maybe on this frame, which the faster you can get to her, the more likely you are to actually see her because the queen doesn't really love the light so much. And so if you take this first frame out and set it aside somewhere, and then don't move one frame at a time. Stick your hive tool in right here and scooch all the frames towards the wall, and then right here and scooch all the frames towards the wall. And then take this frame out now that you have a lot of room to work so you won't roll that queen. And sometimes she can move pretty fast. So when you take that frame out, don't look at the side that was facing the space you made. First, look at the other side because she might be, that's called the dark side. She's probably on the dark side if she's a runny queen who doesn't like the light. Then look at the right side. And when you look at that, let's see what I have next. Here's the look again, right here. See them looking at us? When you look at that, you don't look for the queen at first. You hold that frame out at arm's length and let your eyes take a kind of a photograph of the whole frame. And your subconscious is going to help you here a little bit. And it will say, oh, there's something different. And then you look at that different spot. Unfortunately, this picture I have doesn't have very many bees on it. It's actually easier to find the queen in a more populous colony because you'll either see the retinue around the queen like we saw before, or the queen will be moving, and that's what normally you see. She's moving. The bees don't move away. She has to push her way through them, but they don't close in behind her immediately. So there's a wake behind her. So if the bees are kind of solid on the frame, you look for that space where she's leaving a wake behind her. And then you are more likely to see her. She's right here. See, she's got a tiny little red spot. But there's way too much space on this frame to really see. There's also some bald brood here. We're going to talk about that a little bit later too. But just all kinds of clues on every frame. And as you hold that frame at arm's length and let your eyes take a photograph of it and look for just anomalies, see the bees on this frame are just facing in every different direction. It's like just mayhem, except for right here. You got the bees kind of facing inward, and there's the queen. She just took off from this center of that retinue. There she goes. So see how that looks. And the more you do this, the more your brain is going to get trained to find that queen. It is really nice to find her because then you know which frame to put back very carefully so that you don't kill her. You know what happens to most queens, right? We kill them. Also, the queen has a shiny thorax. There are two queens in this picture. This queen has a very shiny thorax. That happens when the queen measures down inside the cell with, I think they said with her front legs.
Mhm.
As she reaches down in there, it rubs the fur off of her thorax. And so she's got this shiny thorax. You see, this queen's thorax is slightly less shiny. This one is probably the daughter. Um, Although it's tempting to do something when you see this, don't. Just let the bees handle it. They're going to let mother and daughter work together for a while, and you'll find this about 10% of the time. There will be two queens in the colony. Let the bees figure it out because you might accidentally kill the daughter and not the mother, and you just undid everything the bees were trying to do. So just let them do it. Better than finding the queen is seeing eggs because now you know that the queen is actually laying eggs. If you accidentally squeeze the queen, like you're marking her, or she gets squeezed between bees or between frames or whatever, she could be walking around in there and still have wonderful pheromones, but not be laying eggs because you squeezed her abdomen. So that's why you always need to see eggs too, even when you see the queen. Now, there's a couple of clues in this picture. Look, notice that these eggs are
Yeah,
not.
I had just let her in. So what time? 3:20.
Cheryl, you're not muted. So you need to see that the eggs are exactly in the center. This is actually a laying worker colony. And I know the book always says that laying workers have multiple eggs per cell, but sometimes the bees, especially if they're good hygienic bees, are taking out all the extra eggs and they leave just one. Look here, they left one, but it's on the wall over here. In here, there are two larvae. This egg's way on the wall. So this is a laying worker colony, but it does have eggs, just single eggs in cells. So this is where you need to be observant and really look and see what's going on instead of jumping to conclusions too quickly. You also need to know that you have worker brood and not just drone brood because you could have a queen who's run out of sperm or who never mated, and so she's only making drones. Or you could have a laying worker colony that would only have drones in it. So you need to see that you have worker brood. These domed ones are the drone brood. And this is on the bottom of a medium frame that was put into a deep hive body. I run at least one of these in every single one of my boxes because they're just so handy to have. If you're still dealing with mites, it's really nice to have a big batch of drones to act as a mite magnet to attract the mites. You can cut this off, or you can just cut the drones' heads off. And of course, the foundress mite will survive, but she won't be able to reproduce. And you can see this one has a drone cell right here. This is another big clue about lots and lots of drones is sometimes it means they're getting ready to swarm. And then, of course, if you see a swarm cell like this, well, you know they're getting ready to swarm. So big clue right there. This is what worker brood looks like. It's all kind of flat and even. And there's another clue to look at in here, and that is that this worker brood is very solid. And this is what we've been taught to say is great looking cappings, that they should be all solid. But now that I have VSH queens, that means Varroa sensitive hygienic, the bees can actually tell which cells have a mite reproducing in them, and they open it up and take that larval bee out, pupating bee, I should say. So there in a VSH colony, there's going to be a lot more open cells than this. So now I know that this colony doesn't have a disease because this is a really solid, but I also know that they're probably not taking care of mites. That's just a new thing in my world. You also
This
want to
pic
see that you have successive ages of larvae. Do you have a question?
that picture on the last slide,
Yeah.
um, yeah, what was the last thing that you said about that?
I said that this is really they're not VSH bees because if they were, there would be more of these that were open, where the bees detected where mites were reproducing and opened up the cells.
Mhm.
So they're healthy. There's not a disease, but they're also not taking care of the mites, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you then. That's it.
My pleasure. Okay, and you also want to know that you have successive ages of larva. And so the reason I'm saying this, and this is what it should look like, you should have young larva out here, and over here, not in the picture, should be eggs, then young larva, and bigger and bigger and bigger until we get to capped. That's how the bees typically do it. And this means you have a really well-mated queen. If you get in your colony and you've got a capped one, and then a tiny one, and then an egg, and a capped one, and a tiny one, that is an indication that your queen is beginning to run out of sperm or she's not well mated. And so she's laying eggs, but they're not all fertilized. So the bees take those eggs out because there's a drone larva in a worker cell. And then she comes back later and lays another egg, and it just gives you this messy looking area. Um, I have to say though, sometimes young queens do that just because they don't know how to fertilize every single egg as they go, and then the colony gets a pattern like that, and she just lands so fast that she keeps that pattern going. I've seen that happen. So again, you just have to be really observant and know what you have in your colony. But this is what it should look like. And another thing that you just for your information that goes along with your bee math, which we're going to cover later, is that when you see eggs that are standing straight up in the cell like this, that means that egg was laid today. And then when the egg starts to lean over like that, that egg was laid yesterday. And when the egg lays all the way down and starts to, that means it was laid 3 days ago. And when it starts to curl, it's hatched and it's becoming a larvae. So that's an easy way to know. If you see eggs that are standing straight up, but you don't see your queen, you know you have a queen today. If you see eggs that are laying down, you know you had a queen yesterday. And if you see them laying totally down, you had a queen 3 days ago. That's perfectly fine. I mean, if you know you got a queen that's laying this well, she's doing great. Also, as you look down at your larvae, you should see lots of brood food. This is a well-fed colony. They're really giving their larvae lots of food to eat. When you look in your and you see your larvae and they look kind of dry, um, your colony's having a hard time feeding those larvae, and they might actually start cannibalizing them because they can't feed them well enough. If your larvae aren't shiny anymore, they're really starving to death, and that's your clue to feed them. So this is a super well-fed colony, and your larvae at least should look shiny, at least. And then the other thing you're looking for is there enough space? And one easy way to see that is to look at, just separate your boxes, lean the boxes apart, and look at the bottom of your box, your second box. And all these queen cups on here are a huge clue. Of course, we're past the swarming time of year now, but there'll usually be 3 or 4 or 5 of these on the bottom of a cell anytime, and it doesn't really mean anything. But when you start to have lots of brand new queen cups like this, they're starting to think about swarming. And if you see this, they needed more room 2 weeks ago, but they definitely need more room today. There's a lot of debate about whether to cut off these queen cups or not. I usually do because I don't want to have to actually look in every one of them to see if there's an egg in there. So I take them off That way I know that I haven't accidentally left a developing queen, and my colony is going to swarm on me before I get back in there. Although if you see this, you definitely want to get in your colony more than every 2 weeks. Definitely give them a lot more space. Room, that means room to lay. And bare foundation is not room to lay. They need drawn comb. If they're serious about swarming, like this colony is, and you don't have time to split them, one thing you can do that really works is to just put a box of drawn comb between your 2 brood chambers if it's warm enough at night. And that will really separate the brood chamber and give them a lot more room. It's going to slow them down
it's 400.
dramatically. Cheryl, do you have a question?
Oh, sorry, I thought I was on mute. I'm sorry.
Okay. And then another thing you're looking for is there enough food? So you can see that this is bee bread, and they're actually putting honey on top of the bee bread. And then there's a queen cell right here. This colony is queenless. There's a lot of clues right here. It's also interesting that they're drawing this, there is nothing in this queen cup. It's pretty big for an empty queen cup. That's because they really, really want another queen and they don't have anything to build one with. They may actually go all the way. If you look in here, it's going to be full of royal jelly. It's totally full of royal jelly. You have to look really well to see that there isn't a brood in there at all. They're just so hopeful. They're filling this queen cell with royal jelly. They may actually even cap that. And sometimes you've got a laying worker that will lay an egg in there, and it's, of course, an unfertilized egg. So they're raising a drone and wishing it will be a queen. If there's no capped worker brood in your hive, but you have a capped queen cell, you can know for sure that that queen cell is not going to be a queen, because queens emerge in just 16 days and capped and workers emerge in 24 days. There will always be worker brood when there is a viable queen cell in the hive. So we're just really seeing clues. Another thing about queen cells, like I showed you before, that you can look at the bottom of the frame and see all those queen cells, and we know that swarm cells are on the bottom. But to the bees, this is the bottom because it's the bottom of the frame. So if you were to look just at the bottoms of your box and not take your frames out, you would never see these up here. And look, there's one way up there. This is the edge of the comb to the bees. It is the bottom to them. You think the bottom's down here, but they think it's up here. So you got to really look for these clues. And this is probably an emergency cell, and it's up in the middle of the frame. And if you just took your frame out and looked at that with a pile of bees on it, you would never know that queen cell was there because they really cover them. And so while you're looking through your colony, you see the bees and you see under them the capped brood. And if you don't go further and look between the bees and like get the bees out of the way to make sure that you have a laying queen, you could really have a problem. I shook all the bees off, and this was here. I didn't even know it was there. And then a lot of times when we're doing hive inspections with our bee club, people will be watching and they'll say, "What's in that cell?" And I'm like, you need to learn what's in that cell at home. So if you wonder what is in this cell, take a toothpick or a pine needle or something and take the cap off and look in there and see what's in there. And then you'll know this is capped honey, this is capped brood. You know, here's a larvae that's dying. Here's another one that's dying. This colony has a disease. This is one where the bees took the larvae out and got rid of it because it was diseased. But if you have questions, take the caps off and have a look. This is a really badly diseased colony. I mean, so they used to call this PMS, which stands for parasitic mite syndrome. The mites are so bad in this colony that they've just infected all the bees, and the bees are doing their best they can to open up these sick cells and haul the bees up, but there just aren't enough bees left. And if you look at the young bees, you can tell they're young because they're fuzzy. They don't have wings. Here's another one, no wings. And that's a disease called deformed wing virus that is carried by the mites. So this is super bad. If this colony is done, there's really nothing you can do about this when they get this bad. But if you see that, you're not really sure. And if you were to be able to look down in these cells, you would see that a lot of these larvae are slumped down in the bottom and they are making this brown goo in the bottom of the cell. And it's really important for you to make sure that it's not American foul brood. That's a really bad disease that is super contagious and there's no cure for it. And so this is how you tell. You take that brown melted larvae and you take your toothpick and you don't just stick it in there, but you stick it in there and you stir the larvae and then you try to draw out that. And if it will string out like an inch, that's American foul brood. And you need to report that probably to your state organization and burn the colony. That is how serious American foul brood is. Luckily for us backyard beekeepers, American foul brood is pretty rare for us. It's more common for the commercial guys who take their hives to the almonds. It's sort of like sending your kid to kindergarten when there's a disease outbreak. But it's still important for us to know. A lot of times, something that looks like this could also be European foul brood, which is not such a bad disease as American foul brood is. You don't have to burn your colony if it's European foul brood. There's a kind of standard thing to do when you find a disease, and that is to take out those really bad looking frames. Take the frames out that have diseased brood on them and get rid of them. And then feed the colony, because well-fed bees are healthy bees. And if you have drawn comb, that's great. If not, make them draw comb. And if it's really bad, like you have lots of comb that have disease on them, take all the comb away and shake the bees out. It's called a shook swarm. Shake the bees out into a new box with foundation and make them start over. New comb is really almost like an antibiotic. There is a new
Tina, can I ask a question before I forget it? It's important.
Sure.
The Lopi test, that's only for American foul brood. The European doesn't do that, correct?
That's right. The European won't string out at all. Maybe you'll get it out 1/8 of an inch, but nothing. And that's only for American foul brood. Yep.
Okay,
So
the American foul brood, because it's important that that's one of the disease that needs to be immediate attention. Years ago, I had it in my ape area, and I know what was involved. Yeah, in the state here in California, it's required. We're supposed to burn it, but is it also infected the cap under the cap, or is it always open? In other words, when you look for the foul brood, is it also under the cap, or is it always open? Like you can visually see it.
So in American foul brood, the larvae dies after it's capped. So it's not always open, but very often there will be perforations in the cap like this and like this, because the bees can usually kind of smell that and they'll start to open them. But some of these might be infected as well because it could be under a perfectly fine capping. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Okay. So if you find a disease, if it's American foul brood, you definitely need to report it and burn your colonies. If, of course, I don't know how it is in California right now. Here in Colorado, we're at stage 2 fire, which means we can't even run our smokers. You can't run a chainsaw in the woods. I mean, we're seriously in trouble for fire. And you probably have that too. That means we couldn't set our colonies on fire. You wouldn't want to leave that out though. You definitely cannot let bees have access to a colony that has American foul brood. So you would bag it up really tightly in black grocery bags. trash bags, and then bury it if you can't have fires. But it's super important, as he was saying, that we do something about American foulbrood. For other diseases, though, get rid of the really bad frames, feed the bees, open up a little bit of ventilation, especially if you're in, like she was saying, the area that's kind of moist and damp. Bees just don't do well in super high humidity. So open up some ventilation for them and they may recover. You may actually have to go as far as giving them an antibiotic. I really try not to give my bees antibiotics, but there's a new European foulbrood that's a lot harder to deal with than the old one. And sometimes we have to give them antibiotics to help them get over it. Okay, that's the really bad news. Now we'll move on to less bad stuff. So this is what we call shotgun brood. And it just looks like it was hit by a shotgun. There's lots of spaces in there. Now, if you had a new colony, a colony that was newly headed by a VSH queen, there might be a lot of spaces like this and even more in your colony. But keep looking in here and you'll see that there is no open brood and there is no eggs. So this colony, but the brood is healthy. It's not a disease because look at all those cappings. They're beautiful. And of course, here's the ultimate clue right here, a queen cell hanging there, which of course you wouldn't see if you didn't get the bees out of the way. So one thing I want to warn you about, if you are kind of looking at your bees and you of course you've got the frame and you've got all the bees on there and you see the capped brood and you blow on the bees to move them out of the way and you see that there's no open brood, instead of shaking the bees off so that you can really see if there's a queen cell hiding under there, don't do that. Because if you shake a queen cell that has just recently been capped and it has a little queen that's still just spinning her cocoon in there, that will shake her out of the royal jelly that she's supposed to be eating, and she can't wiggle back up into it, and she will die. She'll fall down into the tip of the cell and just die. So if you look through and you see that there's no open brood, brush the bees off of this frame instead of shaking it. Don't ever shake a frame that you think might have a queen cell. And here's another queen cell over here. There are reasons for shotgun brood that are good or not bad things. One is if you have a varroa-sensitive hygienic queen, or if it's cool or hot weather. If there's cool weather, like early in the spring, the bees are going to leave lots of spaces for heater bees to get down in that space, and they decouple their wings and shiver their wing muscles, and that produces heat that warms all the cells around them. Or if it's really hot weather, they bring water in to those spaces and then fan it, which makes air conditioning in their hive. So that's not a bad thing at all. If you have a young queen, as I said, it takes her a while to learn how to fertilize every single larva. So the bees are going to be cleaning out those unfertilized ones, and there'll be more spaces until she gets it figured out. Or if it's early in the spring, they're a lot like that. But the bad things that are reasons for shotgun brood is there's a dearth. It doesn't mean you need a new queen. It means you need to feed your bees. So again, we're going to look at the clues in the hive and find out, why do I have a shotgun brood? I discovered also that noise will make the bees have shotgun brood. I had colonies that were sitting next to a natural gas well. They put the well in after I put the bees there. And the noise from that was just, the bees hated it. They didn't have a good solid brood. They were mean. They weren't doing well at all. And if there's a disease, of course, the bees could be cleaning the disease out. So you don't see the diseased bees because they're cleaning them out. Or if there's an old queen who is running out of sperm, that's typically what we think that shotgun brood is caused by. But like I'm saying, really look at the clues and don't jump to a conclusion. If your bees are doing their job and taking care of mites, as I said, that's varroa sensitive hygienic, you're going to see bald brood. And this is larvae that would normally have been capped, and it has been capped, and the bees have uncapped it because they can't tell exactly which cell has the varroa reproducing in it, but they can tell it's kind of near here. So they're uncapping a group near here to find out which one it is. And they uncap this and they're like, oh, well, it's not this one. So they just leave it. And then eventually they'll recap it. But if it is a diseased one, like this one, they're starting to cannibalize that and take it off. This one with the raggedy edges, they have already removed the larvae. When a bee emerges from a cell, they leave nice clean edges. But when the bees uncap them, they leave raggedy edges. And then if it's not a disease problem, they'll recap them. This is another one. They've started to cannibalize right here, and just part of the larval bee is left. This is actually a good thing.
So,
It means, go ahead, Cheryl.
so when they recap it, it continues developing?
Yeah.
Oh,
Some
okay.
kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And if once you get VSH queens, you'll learn to recognize. I don't see any in here that have been recapped, but you'll start to learn to recognize cells that have been uncapped and recapped. Like this one right here might be a recapped, and this one over here probably recapped. So kind of interesting. Okay. Bees. Okay, so if you pull out a frame like this, can you tell me what you think is going to happen in this hive, or what has happened recently? Well, if nobody's going to be brave, I'll tell you. If I shook the bees off of this frame and it had a good population, I can tell you that this colony is going to have a population explosion. And they're really going to need a lot more room. And I'm thinking I probably did shake the bees off this frame so I could get this picture. But and here's the reason I'm telling you this, because people call me all the time and they tell me that their colony has capped queen cells in it, but they know it didn't swarm yet because there's so many bees in there. And I'm telling you, it almost never looks like this after a colony has swarmed. That all these capped brood, they emerge pretty quickly, and it replaces your population so fast that you really don't get in a hive and say, oh, the bees swarmed because there's so few adult bees. It's really rare. Maybe after an after swarm, you would see a reduced population, but not in general. And then also notice there's a couple of capped drone cells right in the middle of everything here. Like, what is that? That was just a unfertilized egg that the bees didn't remove. It's nothing. I'm going to mute myself for 1 second and talk to my husband. Okay. Okay. Sorry, my dog is chasing off a bear, hopefully.
Oh dear.
So, yeah. The next clue in your hive is this. This is, of course, these are powdered sugar bees. Really, we need to monitor for mites. I have replaced all my queens with VSH queens, but I'm still monitoring. I need to know for sure that my bees are doing the job and that they're going to keep doing the job all the time. They're not being overwhelmed with mites coming in from outside. We really need to continually monitor for mites, even when we think we're okay, because when you think you're okay is when you're not. And especially in your really big, really successful, really populous colonies, those are the ones that are growing lots of mites. And I checked the weather where you guys live. It looks fantastic. It also looks like you have brood year-round and bedding. Because that means that your bees can be raising mites all the time. A brood break up here in the mountains where I live is a wonderful thing, because the bees aren't raising brood, and thus the mites aren't reproducing either. When you live in a place like you live, where your bees have brood all the time, that means your mite numbers can really get out of control in a hurry. So you really got to stay on top of it. You really should monitor for mites every month. And not only for themselves, but the mites bring diseases. And look at this, 3 mites on this poor drone larvae. They bring some of the diseases. I'm not sure that chalkroot is really vectored by mites. But nosema is, and the symptoms of nosema are just failure to thrive, which means it looks to you like your colony should be doing okay. You've got a queen that's doing fine. You've got stuff, you've got forage coming in, but they're just not growing and they're not thriving. But that's really hard to put your finger on. Okay, is it really nosema? I don't know. So my dog's really helping with all kinds of things tonight. Dysentery used to be a sign of the old kind of nosema, but not anymore. So if you see bee diarrhea on the front of your hive, it's probably not nosema. The only way, there's a couple ways to know. You could get a microscope and dye and learn how to diagnose it yourself. But you know what's a lot easier is you pick up a bee that's walking around in front of the hive because it can't get in, and take your little pair of pliers and pull the rear end of the bee out so that its guts string out. And the guts of a healthy bee are brown. You can remember that because of what color poop is. It's brown, and it should be brown. If the guts of the bee are white, that's your clue that your colony has nosema. So dysentery is just the word for bee diarrhea. As like I said, it's not nosema. It can be just too much water in the bee gut. Like I had a colony in my observation hive. They got dysentery really bad one winter, and I didn't realize at the time that dark honey has sometimes it's honeydew instead of really honey, which has a lot higher water content in it, and all that extra water content, it is too much water in the bee gut, and it gives them diarrhea. Also, if they don't get out to fly, I'm sure that's not a problem in your bees, but here in Colorado, if our bees don't get to fly every month or so in the winter, they'll get to have a lot of water in their gut. So also feeding the bees crystallized honey can do that. As I said, though, your bees aren't really confined to your hive, so it shouldn't be an issue. As long as they can fly and get rid of all that extra water that's in their gut, it's going to be fine. We talked about burning hives that have American foul brood. And this is what a hive that has been robbed looks like. When bees take honey out of cells in their own house, they do it neatly, and all the edges of the cells are clean and tidy. But when bees go into somebody else's house and take the honey out, they leave it looking ragged like this. They're in a big old hurry and they just tear them all up. They leave wax everywhere. And this is your clue that your colony was robbed. If you get in and the bees are all gone and the comb all looks like this, you know they were robbed to death. This is what robbing looks like outside the hive. And also the bees will be trying to get in the back, in every little seam. They're trying to find ways in. This was one of the first things that I dealt with as a new beekeeper. And I remembered that I came in and I got the book. I looked in the index, and the index, it had 3 things to do. It said, smoke all the bees in the yard. So I did that, and that didn't change anything at all. And then it says to reduce the entrance to 1 bee entrance. So 1 bee at a time can go in. And I did that, but the bees were still really working on that hive. You should always do that, even though it won't totally solve the problem. But what really stops it right now is to get a wet sheet and put it over your hive. It doesn't have to like really tuck in. It just needs to make it a little harder for the bees to get in, the robbers to get in, because even like human robbers, robbing bees are kind of lazy. They just want it to be easy to get in. And so you just drape the sheet over. The bees who live in the hive are going to figure out that they need to fly down and around and so they can get out. And the reason you make the sheet wet is so that your hive doesn't overheat. Bees overheat really quickly and like in 5 minutes and really easily. So the wet sheet is the way to stop that. And then that one bee entrance is the way to keep it from happening. And let's see, Bee Smart has really good robbing screens. I love them. I keep them on my hives all the time and use it as an entrance reducer, robbing screen, whatever. It's just wonderful. And then I don't have to go looking for them. This is what it looks like if your bee space has been messed up in your hive. Like you forgot to put a frame in, or you forgot to push them together properly, and then the bees build it all fat so that they can put more honey in there. It makes it harder for you to inspect your colony. So there's a couple of things you can do about this. One is you shake all the bees off, and I always keep a long serrated knife in my bee kit and then just cut it down so that it's the right thickness and then push your frames together like they should be. Or you can put this against the wall and leave an extra space and just leave it that way. That's another thing. Or you can brush all the bees off and then push the frames back together like they should be. And now everything's touching, and the bees will go in and restore bee space. So it takes a while for them to do that, but they will do it. So you can just have the bees do it, and they'll clean it up and reuse the wax other places and move the honey to somewhere else. And it's a pretty nice way to do it. One thing that you should keep in mind is how bee math works. And that's because when you look in your hive and you see, you can figure out when you had a problem, or how long everything's been okay, or whatever. So a worker bee is actually, all bees are 3 days as an egg, and then workers 6 days a larva, and then 12 days a pupa. And that's easy to remember because it's times 2. 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 times 2 is 12. And that adds up to 21 days. That's how long it takes worker bees. It takes drones 24 days and queens only 16 days. And as I was saying before, this is your clue. If you get in your hive, and I've seen the bees do this many times, and there's a few queen cells in there, but there's no other capped brood. And it's especially if you're a new beekeeper, it's easy to say, oh, they've got queen cells, it's going to be okay. But if there's no capped worker brood, it's not going to be okay. The bees are just being hopeful. And that is the end of my presentation. Do you guys have questions? There's a couple of things in the chat I see. Okay. Questions?
Hey, Tina, I do appreciate you bringing up that here on the coast with the Varroa mite. It is a problem for us because, like you said, we have brood, and a lot of people treat their hives after they pull the honey in August and September and put their forming faux pads on and think everything is fine. And then 30 days later, they think everything's fine. And then all below, we have warm weather in November, and the hive, the mite population explodes again because we have brood going year round. And what happens then is that the weather gets too cool to treat, in other words, effectively treat. So most of our dead outs, of a lot of beekeeper dead outs, are that the mite population was never reduced sufficient enough for the hive to survive the winter.
Right. I'm glad you're bringing this back up, because I meant to talk about it a little bit more too. So it's kind of important to get your mite numbers low of course, you guys don't have a beginning of the year, but your weather does get warmer and your brood grows faster, I'm sure, during the summer than it does during the winter. So that's kind of your beginning of the year. And that's when it's really important to get your mite numbers low, is during the beginning of the year. One thing that would probably be very helpful for you is to cage your queen, especially during that like January time of year when it's the coldest and wettest, and so that she can't lay eggs. That would give you a brood break. And as soon as you're brood less, then you can do an oxalic acid treatment, which is going to knock all the mites off the bees, and then your bees get to start the year without mites. That's what we do here in Colorado. We have a natural broodless period between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we use oxalic acid then to give our bees really big head start, because they don't Like 1 or 2 mites are going to recover. And then, of course, it's going to take them months to get to a dangerous level. But like he said, if you wait till the end of the year to treat for mites, you haven't done the job because you have to treat for mites and you have to do it at the right time. What's even better, and I was talking about this with a couple of the gals before the meeting started, is to get bees that are resistant to the mites on their own. So get the Minnesota mite, what are they, ankle biters, or VSH queens from Corey Stevens or one of the guys like him, and really start filling your air with good drones and with good genetics. And it's going to take a long time for you all to get on board and do that, but it can be done. And I can tell you, it is so nice not to have to deal with mites anymore. It's so nice to not have to treat, to not have to put those toxins in your hive. I mean, we talk about how dangerous pesticides are for our bees, and then we keep putting them in our hives. So why not get better bees and let the bees be the answer so that we don't have to put poison in our hives? It's really important. That's my soapbox moment for the evening. Are there any other questions or comments?
Tina, on that subject though, here on the coast or here in Northern California, here on the coast, whatever, we get our bees, most of the queens from the Chico Central Valley and Northern Central Valley. And I think Janine probably can answer that too. I don't think they're what you call VSP, VSA B queens. So how can we introduce because we get local queens and how do we can start that program? Because I would mine's our biggest problem. I mean it's for every beekeeper.
Right. So what we did in our club is we really tried hard to encourage people to buy. And so Corey Stevens is one of the only guys I know that's doing VSH queens at a great number. There's a couple others that are further north, let's see, what's his name? Kirk Webster is one, but Corey's in Missouri. And our club worked with him, and if your club is on board with this, he will work with you and give you like 200 virgin queens at a time. And virgins are less expensive. They're a little harder to get introduced. And I know that everybody says that that VSH gene is washed out in the first generation, but we have not found that to be true here in Colorado. We found that we got virgin queens, and we let them mate with whatever was in the air, and they really maintained their Varroa resistance. And so the plan that we had was for every beekeeper in our club to get one virgin queen, introduce that virgin queen, and then get her to raising drones. And once you've got drones, then you get more virgin queens and re-queen the rest of your colonies. And now all the rest of those virgin queens mate with the drones that you have in the air already. And now you have a virgin VSH queens and VSH drones, and you've really got it. It's going to take a long time to get enough people on board to really do that. But you got to start somewhere. And you have people in your bee club that are raising queens. So you get those guys that are raising queens in the Central Valley, get your club together, buy a mated queen, or even better, an instrumentally inseminated breeder queen for him, and get him to start raising good queens for you guys. And then if whoever's selling queens to your people is selling good queens, you answered the problem. What do you think about that, Hank? Do you think it'll work?
I think so. Like I said, we do have a lot, probably here in Colorado, we have a lot of beekeepers here, and we have a lot of people not even part of the association. I think our association has about 100 members right now, and I think there's probably half that many, or even not 100 in the county or in the 3 counties that are not part of the association. So yeah, I can speak for, I think mine's our biggest problem. And when they got rid of the max strips and now we're using Formic Pro, the Formic Pro is not as effective. The max would really knock it down, but the Formic Pro is slower release, doesn't have as much formic acid in it, and it doesn't get warm enough here in times when it's like 55 degrees or 65. It really doesn't knock them down. So we do have, I can speak on a membership, we do have problems with our mites.
Yeah, so you have exactly the opposite problem we have. Those old strips were so powerful here in Colorado that they killed our queens almost all the time.
Yeah, the max strip would kill an old queen in the fall. If you treat in the fall, yes, I had that experience. But now we
Yeah,
have the Formic Pro, and I think some people that probably that are here tonight can speak that is that you need to really check after you do the treatment that you really have knocked the population down. Because if you go
exactly.
into it mite problems, you're gonna have dead outs. I guarantee you.
Right. And so here, another idea though is to not rely so heavily on the chemicals. I mean, even if you can't, you got too many beekeepers not involved and you can't get to the VSH, I'm saying I'd try that anyway. As the more you can get going and talk to the beekeepers around you that aren't in your club and get them on board with the VSH queens. But if you can't do that, get everybody on a really good integrated pest management schedule where you have a drone frame in every single deep hive body. And that drone frame comes out and gets in the freezer every single month. Just that will keep your mite numbers low enough that you don't have a big problem. And then you don't have to rely on chemicals. And then, like I was saying, give them a brood break. Our bees here in Colorado survive a couple of months without brood in the winter, and your bees can too. So cage the queen so that your bees get a really good brood break. That means the bees can handle it. Life is dangerous for mites when they don't have cells to hide in. And Formic Pro is the only one that reaches through the capping. All the rest of them don't reach through the cappings. And if it's not warm enough, Formic Pro doesn't even get through the capping right. So that brood break's a really wonderful thing. And then you can use oxalic acid. Also, if you think about when you do your split and how you do your split, so that your colonies, when I do my splits, I put all my open brood in my new colony and the queen goes there, and all of my capped brood goes in the other colony. And that way, because I have all open brood in one colony, I can do an oxalic acid treatment then. And then a month later, when the new queen in the other part of the split has emerged and all that brood has emerged too, now that colony is queenless. I mean, not queenless, but doesn't have capped brood in it. And so I can do oxalic acid treatment then in that colony. So that's a way to get oxalic if you just do your splits a certain way. And that really works. So, good IPM can be a much better tool even than the pesticides. So it can be done. It's just a lot of work. Anything else? Any other thoughts or questions or ideas?
Well, I concur with you on your methodology of making splits and having the drone brood. I have had difficulty with caging queens and having the bees accept the queen when she's released again.
Oh, of course, that totally makes sense because when a colony is broodless, it's the queen's fault, so they want to kill her. It it might be a good idea to not do all of your colonies at the same time. And that way, before you're going to release the queen from that cage, you could put brood in the hive. That's going to make them much more happy to accept the queen back. That's a good point. I've never had to do that because we have natural brood breaks here. So thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate it, Janine. Have you tried that? Have you tried?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes
Interesting.
it's better just to move the brood, not the queen.
Right. Yeah, just do it when you do your split instead of just caging her for no reason. That makes sense. Yeah. I really like to do my splits not at swarm season, but later so that I have a new queen getting started in July. That way, when the season starts going again the following spring, I've got a queen that's not very young. She's not very old. She's younger. She hasn't been through a spring buildup, which means they're not so anxious to swarm. And once you get on that rhythm of doing your splits in July instead of May, your whole life is easier at swarm season. I don't know do you guys have swarm season? Like, is it longer because you have more brood?
Well, it's variable from year to year depending on the weather, and depending on the nectar flow.
Right. Just when we think we've got the bees figured out, the weather's different.
Right. But, if you're right on the coast, July through September seems to be the time that they have successful mating.
Oh,
But if you're
perfect.
inland, then, they can mate earlier. So you're right. July is an optimal time for having a new queen here,
Nice.
or making
Okay.
a split.
The other thing that the Weather Service said when I checked it about your area is that your county has the most variation of weather of any county in the United States. And I thought that was us because it's 6,000 feet elevation to 8,000 feet. It's just actually 5,000 to 8,000. It's so different.
Yeah,
But
we have a lot of microclimates.
yeah, yep. Which that just makes it harder to follow the pattern. You have to be observant and know what you're doing instead of just do what everybody else is doing. Yeah. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I guess I'll let you guys go.
That was an awesome presentation. Thank you so much, Tina.
Yeah, it was
I,
wonderful.
Thank you.
I agree. There's so much information. I'm going to have to listen multiple times.
Tina,
Yeah.
I do have a question though, since you elevation, my mom lives in Colorado Springs, that's 6,000 feet elevation. What do the bees have? What they use as your forage? What is the main nectar flow? We have blackberries. Don't have problem with nectar flows here where I live.
Oh boy, we have big trouble with nectar flows. So in the spring we have fruit trees, and there's a lot of wild berries in the woods in the spring, like serviceberry and hawthorn, stuff like that. And then it's alfalfa and clover and sweet clover, and that's really about it.
Because where I live
Yeah.
here on the coast, we got an abundance of vegetation. I mean, it's green year round. So, I was
All
wondering,
right, no,
it's almost like high desert up there.
it is high desert, yeah. I'm really envious of you guys now that I checked your weather. I'm like thinking I should move.
Oh, thank you, Tina. Thank you for your presentation.
That was very nice.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
and
much.
do come visit.
I definitely will let you know. And boy, that would be fun.
The redwoods are beautiful, the big redwoods. Everybody should see them one time in their life, the big trees.
I was telling her I was there before. My husband and I rode our bikes down from Seattle all the way to Eureka, and then we went
Wow.
inland from there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but it'd be great to come back. It was a fantastic place to visit. Also, Colorado's a fantastic place to visit. So if you guys did get down to southwestern Colorado, give me a call. We'll show you a good time and play with the bees.
Yay.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, it would be
Thanks.
wonderful to have a bee social with you if you could make it down on a weekend. Well, that's when we hold them usually.
Okay.
That would
It's a
be
deal.
fun.
We'll work on that.
All righty.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks again, Tina. Bye.
You can stop the recording. Does anybody have any questions? I mean, anything more? Talking about bees, we got maybe a couple minutes.